Hello, my name is Grant Singh. I'm the founder of GT Academy, where I do coaching with entrepreneurs making over 10K a month. Now, one of the founders I work with recently came to me and said that he's going to be firing someone and he wants some advice on it. And I put together this presentation for him just to help make the process as easy as possible. Now, before I went through the process of how to fire people, I said, okay, first, what I want to look at with you is how to hire people. One of the misconceptions that a lot of people have in business is that they think, oh, when I hire someone, I can just kind of do what I want. Like, oh, this person would be useful here, so like I'm going to bring this person in. But it's not an actual strategic method. And at scale, if you're just doing this off gut feeling, you're going to end up hiring people that you don't probably need, and you're going to waste a lot of time and resources. So it's important that you get this right, and you're probably going to fire a lot less people as well afterwards. Okay. So how to hire people? There's 4 things that you should be looking for when you're hiring an employee. Okay. You're either getting a return on leads, you're getting a return on time, you're getting a return on LTV, or you're getting a return on skill. Okay. That's what that person is bringing to the company. Okay. So by leads, it could be sales as well. So I'll get into an example of that first. So when it comes to hiring an employee, if you're paying them a payroll of 2.5K a month and they bring in 100 leads, that person's payroll split across those 100 leads, it's cost you £25 to get those leads. That's given that there's no additional costs. So for example, like if Adnan is just outreaching and he brings in 100 leads, that's £25 per lead that I've spent on his payroll per lead. Yeah. So now, if you take this one step further and you don't just look at leads, but actually sales, you can say, okay, if Adnan brings in 100 leads and he's got a 10% close rate, right? So for every lead that we get in, we get a customer. Sorry, every 10 leads that we get in, we get one customer. That means that our cost to acquire a customer is £250. Okay, very important metric. You should always know your CAC. Okay, it's hard when you start out, but trust me, to scale, know your CAC, right? If your CAC is £250 and you've got a total LTGP of £1,000 per customer, that means you can do the ratio of LGTP to CAC and be like, okay, that's a 41 ratio. That's pretty good money, okay? So in total, what happens is you spend £2,500 on someone's payroll. They go out, get leads, they close the leads at best, and then they get you £10,000 every month, yeah? Pretty good return. And if that's your primary, like if the person that you're bringing in, even like this is one of the things that people don't get as well. Like even if I'm bringing in a social media manager, I'm not looking at a social media manager thinking like, oh, how many followers do I have? What a waste of time. That like it doesn't mean anything. What matters to me, especially when you're early stage, how many leads have I generated? Yeah, like how many leads am I generating off the back of this? What's been the change in this? What's my like? How many appointments are we getting booked? That is actually helping me to understand how this person is contributing towards the business, not just the vanity metrics that we might like to look at. Okay, so this is one thing. Now, the second thing that we want to look at is you might hire an employee to give you your time back. Okay, so for example, like there's a couple ways that you can figure out like how much your time is worth. Okay, now there's 2 ways to do this. So you can say like, okay, what's your current annual income, and divide that by the amount of time that you spend working on the business, or the amount of time that you actually spend working, and that'll give you an average hourly rate. And then you can look at your ideal annual income and how much time you'd be spending working then, and that's your ideal hourly rate. Okay, the reason why this is important is because a lot of the time, like you might be working and doing stuff that is worth £100 an hour. So let's say I'm doing coaching and it's £100 an hour, okay? And I've got a bunch of admin things to do, and that cost me £10 an hour to outsource. Why would I spend my time doing the £10 an hour stuff when I could be spending more time on the coaching side of things? Like it just doesn't make sense, okay? So it's important for you to understand like what is your actual average hourly income? Like what's your average hourly rate? And then when you're looking at an array of tasks, let's say you've got 10 tasks that you do in the business on a day-to-day basis. You're like, okay, these 3 tasks bring me the most money. These 7 tasks are bringing me like an average income, an average hourly rate. They cost like £10 an hour. Why not just outsource all of those things at the bottom and you spend your time on these things? That means your average hourly rate is going to increase because you're spending your time on the higher leverage stuff, not the things that's just consuming your time, consuming your energy for no reason. Okay. Now, one of the things with this is that yes, business costs might increase on paper, right? If you start outsourcing more things, but not if you account for the cost of your own time. So I'll put together a little table that hopefully breaks this down a little bit easier. Okay. So if we look at this now, right? average income model. If you earn £5,000 per month, and that's your revenue, okay, and you have £1,000 in expenses, that's your costs, and you work 160 hours a month, your time is worth £25 an hour. Okay? Now, that's your average. Like, that's actually what's going on. If ideally you want to be making 10k a month, and at that point your business expenses would increase to £2,000 a month, and then you want to also work 80 hours per month on the business, that means that your time is going to be worth £80 an hour at that time. Okay? If you want your time to be worth £80 an hour and not £25 an hour, you need to stop spending time on the things that cost £25 an hour, outsource them, so you can spend more time on things that's going to get you £80 an hour. Okay? Like, it's not rocket science, but it is business math, and business math is often very hard to calculate. Okay? Okay, now I've put together a specific example that hopefully contextualizes this a little bit more, right? And stay with me. I know this is hard to follow, but stick with it, okay? You've got time spent. Like, if you do this task, let's say lead gen, it's going to cost you 20 hours to do. It's going to take 20 hours to do. And if you outsource it, it's going to be £100 an hour, and it's also going to take them 20 hours to do, okay? Now, similarly with sales, you might have to spend 5 hours doing it. You can outsource it, and they might spend 5 hours because there might be 5 sales calls which are hour long, whatever, right? Now, alternatively, there might be something like admin, which if you sit and do it, it's going to cost you 15 hours to do, and you can outsource it for only £20 an hour, right? And they would actually get it done quicker than you would, okay? So it's not even like you're comparing your hourly rate to their hourly rate and that's it. You're also considering the fact that the work is going to get done much quicker, which means that it's going to cost you even less than just a direct hourly rate comparison. So here, if you're doing it yourself and you know that your average hourly rate is £50 an hour, it's going to cost you 15 hours to do it, and your average hourly rate is 50. So that's going to cost the business £750 because you spent your time doing that. Whereas if you outsourced it and it would cost them 10 hours to do, and at £20 an hour, it would only cost the business £200. You've got to realize you doing it yourself also costs the business. Yeah. So getting your time back is also important, right? Now, if we move on to the next type of thing, like the next way an employee can bring value is LTV. Now, let's say you do have a SaaS business and you have a product that costs $100 a month or £100 a month, and typically customers stay with you for 6 months, right? And you've got 100 of these customers, but the LTV of those customers is £600, okay? Because you just imagine that there's no costs for now, right? If you hire someone in customer service that increases the retention rate to 12 months, the LTV increases from 600 to 1200 for each individual customer. Yeah, that customer service person could just be calling them up whenever they have a problem. They could just be more involved in the process. They could be involved in the onboarding, whatever it is, right? But they change it so that someone sticks with you from 6 months to 12 months, right? Over those 100 customers, what you're going to see is that the total difference in terms of revenue is going to be, you've got 100 times 600, right? And then you've got 100 times 1200, okay? So you're going to have £60,000 in average income that's added on, yeah? £60,000 in average income that's added on, okay? And now if you think about that over 12 months, that's £5,000 per month, which should give you an indication of what that person's salary should be. So if you're paying someone £5,000 a month, right, and they're only adding £5,000 a month of value to the business, you know, like, you probably don't need them. I would say in this case you do, because increase in LTV, increase in experience is more likely than people will refer. You'll probably get more customers as well. There's other things to consider. But if we're just looking at this like as a direct correlation of like, how is this person bringing in more money? It's literally just like, okay, if that is the average income extra per month that we're getting, paying this person a salary of 2.5k a month, that's great. That makes sense. Yeah. On paper, you can see exactly why you would pay that person, because it's going to give you an additional 2.5k a month. Yeah. So this is how calculating return on employee when it comes to LTV is typically done. Now, the very last thing is skills. Now, this isn't a direct monetary aspect that you can look at. However, it is something like really worth considering. Now, let's say if you're trying to make an app, you can sit down and you can do 3 years of like a coding course, you can do a degree, you can spend 10 years like getting experience, and you might also not like coding, so you might even just give up 2 years into trying, or you can just hire someone who knows how to code, right? Outsourcing like development, lead gen, sales, fulfillment to people that have more experience in it allows you to leverage their experience. Yeah. So what you need to think, like, and it's not a direct financial trade at this point, but what you've got to consider is, well, what's the time for me to learn the skill? What's the cost on the business of me deferring my attention from high priority things to learning this skill? And how much time is it actually going to take me to then develop that skill and then use it in the business, right? Versus the time and money it'll take for someone experienced just to go and do it. Yeah, I know for a fact I would never sit and learn coding so that I could develop an app, but I would pay a developer to create an app for me, because I just know from like my point of view, it's just not worth the time and effort of trying to build it myself. Yeah, I don't have the experience. I don't want 5 to 10 years of experience on building apps. I would rather just pay someone else to do that, and I focus on my strengths. Yeah. So again, this is another way that you can get a return on hiring employees. So please consider this, and before you fire someone, have a look. Are they actually really bringing you something valuable here that you might have not accounted for? If so, maybe you need to reconsider your decision. But if you're sitting there thinking, no, this person needs to be fired, the next thing that you need to look at is, how are you actually going to have that conversation with them? Okay? Like, that's typically the hardest part, right? So I've put together 7 steps for handling this difficult conversation. Instead of breaking them down here, I'm just going to go straight into it, okay? So the first thing that you need to do is, like, obviously, when you sit down and have this conversation, this is granted that you're already in the room with them, you're already speaking to them, you're on call, whatever it is, where you're actually going to be communicating this to them, and you've checked to see that it's a good environment. Like, you know, like walk into the coffee shop and, like, you know, in the middle of the day, they've had a bad day, you're speaking to them, the emotions are high, whatever, right? Like, you've took them to a controlled environment where you can actually speak to them directly in a humane way and say, okay, look, and then have that conversation, right? The first thing that you want to kind of lead with is a preemptive statement. And the reason why is it helps the person to prepare for what's about to come. If you just go in and you just say, hey, look, you're doing this really bad, I'm sorry that you're going to have to leave, right? Like, this is granted that they're kind of leaving on good terms. If, you know, someone stabs someone and you need to leave, you need to fire them, then you can be a little bit more harsh. But if it's just like a general employee, then the first thing is an initial preemptive statement that allows them to prepare for the bad news that they're about to hear. Yeah. And if you're struggling with this, I put some examples on that I think are quite effective, right? Like, I'm really sorry, but I need to have quite a difficult conversation with you. Yeah. They're immediately thinking, okay, I have a feeling of what's going to come next, and that then leads into the next thing. Yeah. Now, the next thing is a clear statement of decision. The last thing that you want to do when you're firing someone is be really wishy-washy with your words. Okay. Don't say, look, I'm sorry, like, you know, I just don't know, like, what the future is going to look like with you here. Like, no. If you're firing someone, be really clear, okay? We've decided to let you go. Unfortunately, we're terminating your employment. I'm sorry, but today's going to be your last day. You see how all of these are really, like, specific? They're really clear for you to understand, yeah? You don't want to leave the person that you're giving a bad experience confusion to add to that bad experience, yeah? Be super clear with the statement. It also shows that level of authority that, okay, this person, like, this is being made. This is what's going on, yeah? And people respect that to some degree from a leadership point of view of, like, it's a clear decision that's been made. And it's also less likely that they're going to complain. It's less likely that they're going to haggle or, like, ask if there's anything else that they can do or whatever. Like, it makes the conversation much more clean because they already feel like the decision's been made for them. Yeah. Now, the next thing as well is that you've got to provide some sort of reasoning. Again, I've provided a few examples, but you want to basically take it to facts, yeah? You don't want to get emotions involved in this. You don't want to be wishy-washy again. You want to say, look, this is because of, for example, if someone has violated your policies, this is because of recent incidents that have violated our company's policies, which you may be aware of, yeah? Like, you might even want to quote what the policies are just to be super clear, like, this is exactly what's going on, right? And that also makes them feel like, oh, well, that's fair, yeah? Like, it's fair because they've given me a reason. You know, when people don't give you a reason for something, like, I hate this all the time where, like, I'll have, like, for example, my parents will tell me, like, oh, go and do this thing. And I'm like, yeah, but why? And they're just like, just go and do it. I'm like, yeah, but why? And they're just like, as humans, I think we all have that kind of natural curiosity of, like, why is this happening, right? And it's your job as an employer and someone that cares about your employees and your reputation as a business to show them, look, this is exactly why. Yeah. So after that, the next thing that you want to do is just give them some acknowledgement, like especially if you like them, especially if you've like had a good experience with them, like show some sort of like happiness of like, yeah, like you really did a good job here. If you can pinpoint like specific things as well that they've always done well, or some things that you've been really happy with. I know I've had conversations with people in the past about letting them go. I've mentioned things like, look, like when it comes to this, you're exceptional. Like you're really good. No one else competes in the field when it comes to this kind of thing. But unfortunately, because of X, Y, and Z, like we just can't have it. Yeah. That again, it softens the blow a little bit, right? It makes them feel like they are valued. The last thing that you want is for an employee of your company to go to someone else, go to an online website and complain about your company, complain about the way that this process was handled, because that's going to detract away from your reputation. Yeah, it's going to make you look bad. It's going to make everything else that you do like it's just not something that you need. Okay, so giving them that positive to kind of like go off, which makes them feel more okay with the situation. Okay. And then the next thing is, this is like something that I learned in sales, is like people always want to know what the next thing is. Yeah. So, you've went through a few different things, you've helped them, you've talked about the situation, you've made them feel okay about themselves because you've given them a compliment. The next thing people want to know is like, okay, what's next? Yeah. So for example, here, you'll receive your final pay slip on this day. Okay, your benefits will be continuing, blah, blah, blah. These are the severance details. We'll be sending over a document to you. You'll see this kind of going through at this point, right? So immediately, people feel like their hand is being held throughout the entire process because they've not been left in the dark about any of the kind of essential things that they'll be curious about. Yeah, like what is next? Why is this happening? What did this person think of me? Like all of that's being handled, right? So details on the final pay and benefit, and then you can go into a little bit more about what the next steps are, right? Now, if there's specific things like returning company equipment, let's talk about like what timeline is for your current tasks, like what kind of things you've got on projects, things like that. This is what we need you to do before leaving. Like from a work perspective, there's probably a few things on there that you need to have as well, right? One of the things that you can do if you want to leave things on a more positive note, especially for the employees that you really like, is say something like, oh, we're going to be having a leaving party, or we'd love to put a leaving party together for you, like blah, 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 or we've got this gift for you, something like that. Might be too soon to do that straight away in that conversation, but it's definitely worth having something to, again, leave that experience of them transition from your company to the next on a positive note, right? And then the last thing, just a nice thing to do, is offer some support, yeah? Like, if you're looking for a future job and you need a reference, let me know. If you've got any kind of questions about this process, then contact HR. Like, whatever you can offer them to like just show that you're on their side and you're not against them, again, is just going to make this process a little bit less friction. Or it's going to have a little bit less friction in the process. Okay? So that's the kind of process that I would take someone through when I'm firing someone, or the advice that I would give to someone if they are firing someone as well. It's really simple. It's quite like standard, but like these are the 7 steps that I would recommend. Okay. Now, I hope this is clear. I hope this is easy for you guys to understand. If you do have any questions about it, definitely let me know. If not, I will catch you guys in the next video.